It's Texas football talk
from those who wore the burnt orange.
Welcome to Longhorn Lowdown. Now here's Todd Hunt, Stevie Lee, and Stu Myrick.
And welcome to Longhorn Lowdown again. Another week. We did survive the encounter with Chris Del Conte. Hopefully you got his phone charged by now. Stu Myrick, along with Todd Hunt, Stevie Lee. What's up, fellas?
Hey, what's up?
What's going on, man?
And joining us on the virtual couch tonight, this is a man that I've gotten to know over the last several years, one of the absolute finest individuals I know. He is, of course, an absolute legend when it comes to the burnt orange. Played at Texas, 1972-74, all-conference, all-American, in the College Football Hall of Fame, 10 years with the Detroit Lions, and just an incredible individual. One of my NFL alumni cohorts, Doug English. Doug, how are you?
Well, I'm really good. I'm really glad to join you guys. Man, you got a couple of my favorites with you over there.
You know, I hope so.
They still speak to me anyway.
Yeah.
We try to have some fun.
Hey, you're a defensive lineman. I'm not going to not talk to a defensive lineman.
Absolutely, right? Man. We defensive linemen stick together.
They're kind of like tying a stake around the kid's neck so the dog will play with him. You know?
Man, I feel pretty protected with you three up front.
Let's do it. I want to. I'm happy that Doug has graced us with his presence. I'm going to tell you a little story. How I knew that I was in the midst of royalty. We were over at the. I'm on the board with you guys for the NFL Alumni Austin chapter, and we were having a meeting over at Jack Allen's. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh God,
I remember the meeting.
I know exactly which one.
Yeah, I know who was over in the corner having a meeting with someone. It was Matthew McConaughey having a meeting in the corner
with Chris.
But when yeah, exactly. I didn't want to say who it was, but yeah. But Doug English walked in the door. The whole restaurant stopped.
That's right.
The whole restaurant stopped, and he's waving at people. He's walking over, kissing babies and everything. And I was like, this man stopped the whole – Matthew McConaughey is in the corner. No one cared. But when Doug English walked in the door, it was Doug English time, right? So,
Stevie, you know how to put hair on a story, man.
Now, Doug, admit it. Both those guys stopped at our table and greeted you.
And greeted.
They didn't care about the rest of us, but they made sure to shake your hand. So
exactly.
So that's pretty good.
I can, yeah. Well, it's a little story behind that, but
I know.
I hear you. But it's Doug English though, and I'm happy that you came on. And I really,
God bless you. Thank you.
Really appreciate.
Hey, Stevie, tell him about your little thing you got for one of his events.
So, well, you want to talk about your foundation a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. Lone Star Paralysis Foundation. Tell us all about it.
Well, yeah, it's the Lone Star Paralysis Foundation, and I always describe it with 3 R's: research, recovery, and recreation. Research is pretty obvious. Well, our biggest piece of research we fund right here at UT. Dr. George Bittner does some incredible things with fusing nerve cells. Never been done. And I think he's going to win a Nobel out of it one day.
Right.
He's the only person that's ever made a distal nerve end come back to life. So you cut the nerve off, and the rest of it typically dies. And if it's a peripheral nerve, then it'll grow kind of down that path, if you're lucky, about the speed of a human hair. So it takes a long time, and stuff atrophies and it gets lost, and there's a lot of problems even with peripheral nerves. And Dr. Bittner's technique works, I can't say 100% of the time because I don't have the data in front of me, but I bet it's 100% of the time or slightly less.
Yeah.
And he's the only person to ever make a distal nerve come back to life.
Wow.
And so, I have a friend, dear friend of mine from UT, the quarterback when I was there. He was working on his transmission and in a international scout, I remember, and somehow the transmission slipped off the jack, cut his thumb off. And so he, it's dangling. It's just on a piece of flesh. And so he goes to the hospital, and they actually, they tried to suture his nerve back together, and nothing happened. And he had no feeling or movement in his thumb for, I don't know, a couple of years. And then finally, he has some of it back. And that same situation today, if he had gone into one of Dr. Bentner's trials at Johns Hopkins or WellSpan York in Pennsylvania, then they would just fuse that nerve back together, and he'd wake up and be able to move it and feel it. And so, and then they're also doing, we sponsor them and some graduate students to do parallel studies using spinal cord. Now it gets really interesting in the spinal cord, because spinal cord, you just breathe on it and it quits working. I mean, it's like crab meat. It's very tender and easy to bruise. And once you bruise it, electricity doesn't go through it. So, and he's actually finding he's kind of turning traditional knowledge upside down with what he's discovering by fusing, actually doing an allograft, sort of a transplant of a non-matching spinal cord tissue. And the brain still has, even, at an advanced stage, the brain still has the ability to choose nerves. I think I'm about to sneeze. Too much pepper on my pizza. So, I mean, it's just incredible what we're discovering right here at UT, College of Natural Sciences. So, they're working away, and the problem is right now UT won't let he's had some undergrad students that couldn't finish their work because they won't let him come on campus.
Right.
So that's been frustrating, but that's our research, and we fund some other little projects here and there. Recovery, we sponsor the Brain and Spine Recovery Center, or we call it the Lone Star Paralysis Foundation Brain and Spine Recovery Center, and it's at Spiro at 42nd and Guadalupe. And we provide, I think we're up to 22 scholarships this year for therapy for people who just, their insurance will run out, or they don't have the means or the ability to get the therapy. We have all this high-tech stuff that allows people to basically, when you're paralyzed, usually you don't lose absolutely everything. And so a lot of times you can find enough muscles and strengthen them and retrain yourself and maybe inspire a little nerve growth here and there where you can walk again or drive a car or hug your kids or something that's important.
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of great success stories going on over there at Spiro at 42nd and Guadalupe.
Good.
And then the third R is recreation, and we fund a lot of recreation stuff. I mean, these guys in wheelchairs, they do everything from, paddleboard, tennis, basketball, scuba diving, skydiving, hunting, fishing. It's really great, the programs we have going on all over, on about a multi-state area around Texas. So, we've gotten a lot done. We've been entrusted with a lot of money, and we for a long time we didn't pay anybody. And we realized we could, we just found a wonderful gal to help us with the administration of fundraisers, and she does wonderful work, and we love her to death, Caitlin, and so she gets not nearly enough. But when it's all said and done, our admin is about 4%.
Yeah.
So we send more to the bottom line than any charity there is. I mean,
that's good. That's a
What-
great
what-
profile for a charity. Of course, you can find out more at lonestarparalysis.org.
Thank you.
Find out more information on the website.
So speaking of fundraising, Caitlin is doing a great job, because was it last April that you had the banquet in 2019?
40th.
That
was the 40th.
That was the 40th? Yeah. And there was some really, really cool stories. It was some really, really cool stories that night. I was sitting there just like doing this right here, man, the whole night. So it inspired me to take part in the silent auction.
Oh, man, you are too cool, Steve.
Yeah.
He is.
So that night, I told my wife, we were sitting at the table, I said, babe, I don't know how much we're going to go up on this silent auction deal, because it was all virtual. You can bid on your phone.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, please forgive me, but nobody's leaving with this but me tonight. And this is Jackie Robinson, LA
Yeah.
Dodgers jersey,
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
signed by President Barack Obama. And
Wow.
I said I had to have that. So I've had this ever since then. Man, I'm really
Oh, I
proud
didn't
of it.
realize you got that. Thank you, Stevie.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of that. I
Your
got
wife is such a stud too, man. I love
yeah,
her.
yeah.
You're
Thank
like
you.
me. You overmarried.
You know, all my friends tell me I outkick my coverage. So
Oh yeah. Oh
I hear
yeah.
that a lot.
so I'm okay with that, man. But I appreciate you putting all that together, man. It was a fun night. It was a inspiring night. The people that you guys touched you can tell in the room that they were really, really touched. So that's a great organization.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a life's work.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things is, you know, the events that are put on for Lone Star Paralysis Foundation are among some of the best events in town. You know, you're going there to help them, but you're going there also. You have a lot of fun, and you bring out some really great people to help you out. It's really admirable, and
We do, Stu. Our volunteers are you know, a lot of our volunteers are in wheelchairs.
right.
And I mean, but everybody, they do so much work. They're just like, put me in, coach, and we, you know, and Caitlin sends them and brings them and instructs them, and everybody, it's like a fine oiled machine. It's really great.
Yeah.
And that's how we're able to bring so much to the bottom line, is through volunteer workers. So it's just sort of, you know, in 40 years, you know, things can kind of evolve. And we've stuck with our goals of taking care of money that's been given to us, make sure it goes to the mission and not to somebody's car payment or something, you know.
Yep.
And then, so it's we've gotten better at doing that. And you know, brothers like y'all that come and help us out, and other volunteers and people that donate their names or their time or their money, or it's really a great machine. And of course, it's all sitting in the garage with a cover over it at the moment. I mean, we've had nothing all year. You know, had to cancel everything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Doug, I have a question for you. I don't know much about your upbringing. I try to look at some things. I know you're you know, from Dallas. So give me a little background on how you grew up and how you ended up getting to the University of Texas.
Well, I hope you got your no-dos handy.
I got plenty of no-dos.
Yeah.
Plenty of time.
So yeah, I grew up in East Dallas, which was a neat little part of Dallas. It was very blue collar, and it's actually where everybody that moved to the city from the country would move to East Dallas. I think maybe because of the Mesquite Rodeo is right around the corner.
Yep.
I'm not sure why, but it was just sort of the end of Dallas of choice of people that grew up in the country, as my dad did. And so we went, but the high school was huge, and it was a great high school. I mean, I went to school with over 4,000 kids.
Wow.
And we didn't have freshmen. This was just sophomores, juniors, seniors, over 4,000 kids.
It's gigantic.
And I think everybody got a great education back then, and it was a great place to grow up. We had a ranch outside of town, and so I was kind of a weekend warrior, you know. I mean, I'd go out there and work on the weekends and summers, which came into play for my company down the road, but, you know, here in 7 or 8 years ago when I started it. But anyway, so I went out for football starting in the 5th grade, and I never made a starting team. I got cut in the 8th grade. And I was about 3rd string on the B team in high school, which is varsity JV B team. So I was the equivalent of a 9th string or so in high school, and then kind of found a weight room. I'd say my balls dropped, but I can't say that on the radio. So
Yes, you can.
Just did.
You can say it here.
Just did. So you're good.
Yeah, it's PG-13.
So
It's fine.
I matured and grew hair on my face and elsewhere, and and found a weight room. And then by my senior year, I was starting both ways. So the first game I ever started was the first game my senior year. So, I mean, like in today's market, I wouldn't have even gotten a scholarship. I mean,
No.
I wouldn't have, I don't think I might have got a chance to walk on somewhere, but they don't even look at guys if they're not, start looking at them as sophomores, you know, as you know. So it's that kind of gets to me to see what it's evolved to in terms of recruiting and knowing that I would have been left out. But there was a great coach at Texas, a defensive line coach who happened to recruit the Dallas area. His name was Pat Patterson. And he was the perfect coach and mentor for me. And I guess he scouted. We had a lot of really good players on the team my senior year. We got a lot of D1 scholarships. And I want to say 6. And a couple others, you know, other level schools. But he was looking at these other guys and saw something about my play that he liked, and talks. I picked up a lot of this over the years, just kind of reading between the lines, and then I learned a lot from his daughter at his funeral too. But or actually, in the last year or so of his life, I saw a lot of his daughter because he was in and out of hospitals, and she was always there helping him. But you know, I think it went something like, you know, he goes into Darryl and says, "Hey, I got this kid in Dallas I really want to offer." And he's like, "Who is he?" "Yeah, well, his name's Doug English." And "Are you sure?" And Patterson, I think he just said, "Yeah, I'll guarantee you he'll be a good choice." And so once Texas started recruiting me, then a lot of other schools started recruiting me. And then suddenly I'm an item, you know. But I'd already decided I felt like if I didn't play at Texas, I was backing out. I mean, I was backing down, you know. And so I had to. And boy, it was the best decision I ever made.
I was going to ask you, was there ever any doubt that you were going to play anywhere else but Texas?
Well, you know, I did a few recruiting trips. I'll tell you this one funny story, because looking back, it's just how naive I was. When I left you, we were at TCU, and they were all excited. They won the game. They beat SMU, and at the end of that, each row of those brand new hardwood lockers were these cardboard boxes full of apples, and they looked like they had just come from a orchard, because they had leaves on them and they were a little round, and their boxes were full of. And you know, you could reach in there and have an apple for free. And I saw that, and I thought, free apples. This is the big time now.
Okay.
And I was kind of thinking about TCU. So I don't know, a week or two later, I come down here to UT, and I watched Texas just destroy A&M. And there was an older man, little guy that named Mr. Jim. I don't know if you guys ever heard stories about Mr. Jim, but we'll talk about that offline sometime. And as the players, you know, and they beat them so bad that, you know, linemen were playing fullback, and I mean, you know, the guys were just, receivers were playing quarterback. I mean, they were just, and still scoring on them. You know, it was really just what football's the most fun football you can imagine. And the stadium, you know, at the time, I think it held 86,000, and the band, and holy cow, I said, you know, and then to top it all off, we go in the locker room, all this little recruits, you know, and as the players are filing out, Mr. Jim is shoving 2 apples that look more like pumpkins out on the deal, and the guys are grabbing them, you know, and giving one of their date and taking a bite out of the other one with 2 hands. And I saw the size of those apples and the size of this place, this stadium, and this town. And I said, okay, I get it now, you know, and that was the end of it. I canceled my other recruiting trips and came here.
So how was the training table back then? Because, you know, I know when I was training, we go through the line. It's like grandma's cooking in the back with big old chicken fried steaks. You
Oh
got
yeah.
all you can eat. So what was your training table back then? Because I know my training table was awesome. I couldn't get off of it. But anyway,
Looking back, it was, again, it's a sign of the times. It's crazy. My first 2 years, I think, Nighthawk catered the training room.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And so a lot of track players and people, guys from track that were on half scholarship would make up the difference working as waiters in the dining room. And they'd wear a white chef's coat and the whole deal. And they'd leave the door locked. You had the pit. You still had the pit down there in the dining room, right?
Yep.
You go down the stairs, that tight area before the doors open.
Yep.
Well, these poor guys, they leave the doors locked and they're setting up all the tables with family style. So we could platters this big around and pitchers of everything you could possibly think of to drink, vegetables and all kinds of desserts, and it was just an incredible dining hall. And some poor guy, you could hear those keys. We're all beating the crap out of each other down there in the pit, waiting for the doors to open.
Yep.
And it's like roller derby down there. I mean, it's the guys are getting passed around over the head. I mean, everything's going on down there.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden we'd hear those keys jingle, and it'd get real quiet. Man, that poor guy, he's trying to open that door and jump out of the way before those doors fly open, and guys would go running in there and and eat. And you'd think there was gold on the table, but it was just chicken fried steaks, and top chops, platters of top chops.
Wow.
It was really great. And then Coach Patterson told me later that it was just costing so much money they had to cut back, and they hired Lubies because Patterson said, well, nobody does it better than Lubies. They got the same food, and they're that's what they do is they portion it out. So that's when we went buffet style as we were when you were there.
Yep.
But yeah, the training room for a couple of years was glorious. It was something else.
It sounds glorious.
This is the first time I've heard of other people catering our training table, y'all. I've never heard of that. Yeah, that's cool.
Getting onto campus, and let's think back. This was early 70s. You're coming off the back-to-back national championships. Texas is they have cemented themselves as the royalty of college football. What was coming on campus like back then when you came onto campus? I mean, you got to imagine football team ruled the roost.
Yeah, I mean, football still does.
Yeah,
probably.
But
I think these guys, I'm pretty sure there's not a party that they can't walk into if they want to go. And
yep.
But I turned 18 the day I moved in the dorm, and suddenly I'm playing ball against guys that shave. And it was quite a transition. Then two-a-days and all new sights and sounds. And here's really probably the most important point of all is that back then we had a freshman team, and freshmen were not eligible. I mean, Earl Campbell would have had to play on the freshman team. Roosevelt Leaks played on the freshman team.
Sizemore
he certainly
did too, right?
Yeah, huh?
Sizemore did too, right?
Oh yeah. And we had our freshman team. I think our offensive line. I know our freshman offensive line was bigger than the varsity offensive line.
Wow.
And we had every all-state running back was on that team. We ran the wishbone with all-state running backs. And it was just an all-state quarterback. And I mean, it was really the who's who. It was a tremendous recruiting class. And we played 5 games, and Coach Bill Ellington was our coach / mother. He took care of us. If it was hot, he had a issue with the spine where it's kind of bent over like this, and he'd take that hat off and look up and go, boy, is this too hot? Let's go in. And okay. And we played 5 games. I think we won every game by 50 or more points. We just rolled over people, and it was just, it was a great way to start to be inserted into big time college football.
Yeah.
And then within 2 years, that went away, and everybody came in together. And I always felt sorry for those guys that, as freshmen, got thrown in with the Jerry Sizemores of the world.
Wow.
I mean, it was bad enough in spring training when I had to get in that cage with the 2x12 down the middle. And Jerry's on the other end.
Oh no.
I did a lot of maturing with that 2x12 between my legs. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you what.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
When you were on the team, and this was back in the heyday of the Southwest Conference, who was the bigger rival? Was it A&M or was it Arkansas?
Well, between A&M, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, they were all huge. Everybody else was just filler. I mean, we played those 3 guys, and we hated Oklahoma because they cheated so bad.
Right.
And
Still do.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and then A&M, I mean, we knew a lot of the A&M guys. They're good guys, but their fans were so goofy, and just so funny about being fans.
Yeah.
That we
Still are.
it was fun to beat them. And then Arkansas, it was probably the third, because of the '69 game and because of the Frank Broyles, Darrell Royal thing. It was always a big game. We didn't play them as freshmen though.
Okay.
But they were. That was a big rival back then, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, and Todd can speak to this, in 91 when they left the conference to go to the SEC, and that was such a huge deal. And I know we made that thing into like pointing and laughing that Arkansas was going to go to the SEC and they were just going to languish in last place, which
They've done it.
Haven't been in
Pretty
last
much
place,
have.
but they haven't been far from it. So
A&M's done a pretty good job of
A&M's done okay.
languishing,
Yeah.
finding
They've
another
done okay, yeah.
conference to be mediocre in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Give me a couple of like your favorite moments, not necessarily on the field, but your time in the 40 acres. I mean, just life on the 40 acres, whether it's meeting somebody or being somewhere. Give me a couple of moments like that stick in your mind to this day.
Well, there's so many, and you almost have to break them down: mental, physical, or spiritual, or sexual, because there's just so many. I know.
I want the ones that you won't tell anybody.
Yeah, we'll talk about those over a beer.
Again, the only ground rule is make sure the statute of limitations has expired.
Yeah.
Yes, we're always thinking, Stuart. No, but so my sophomore year. Well, no, yeah, my sophomore year. So I played the first couple of games, and there was a couple of upperclassmen that were starting at defensive linemen. But I got in and got to play a lot in the first 2 or 3 games. And so Oklahoma comes up. Well, as you know, it's a whole different tempo around here when Oklahoma comes up.
Yep.
And I'm walking in the locker room, and I walk past the bulletin board where they put the starting lineup, and I look, and suddenly my name is on the top of the list. And I'm starting. My first start is Texas, Oklahoma.
Wow.
And so I thought, and my first thought was, oh, crap, and then my second thought was, well, what about my friend Bill Walker? This guy's been mentoring me and helping me, and he's the starting defensive lineman, and now I just took his job. And all this is running through my head, and I turn, and walking down the hall is Bill Walker.
Uh-oh.
And he walks up to me, and he gives me a big hug. He goes, man, I knew you were gonna be in there sooner or later. And he said, I'm going to help you every way I possibly can, and anything you need, you ask me. And then fast forward to the game, walk down the tunnel, and it's just you walk down this dark tunnel and you hit this wall of light and sound as you walk out onto the field. And it is startling, first time. And it was my first start on top of that, so my eyes were going all over the place, and I was snot bubbles were coming out, and I didn't know what I was doing. And my coach, Pat Patterson, is waiting. He's standing down there by the tunnel, and he's kind of looking up at the stands. And so I walk out, and they're waiting for the signal to run out on the field. And he's standing there, and he goes, he takes his hat off, kind of scratches his head. He goes, "This ain't no place for a timid man, is it?" And then he just jogs on the field. And it was like suddenly all this chaos in my brain just focused down to a laser. And I think I had 16 tackles that first game. I mean, it was
Wow.
They ran a lot more back then. It's hard to do now, but Pat Patterson always knew exactly what to say, where to be, what to do. I mean, he was a wonderful, wonderful coach. And so that was quite a week, that first start week. And then the end of the year, we had a fumble bounce back in bounds. It should have gone out of bounds. And we beat OU. And then we'd be number one. We were like 3. We dropped down to number 3, and Alabama was number 2, and I don't remember who was number 1. But we played Alabama in the Cotton Bowl and then beat them.
Wow.
And so, I mean, we were just a oddly, typical Oklahoma bounce on a fumble. I don't know how those guys control the balls the way they do, but we would have been national champions that year. It's a real shame. I'd sure like to have one of those rings, but.
Yeah. So Doug, when you got to the end, the last couple of years at UT, and when did you know that you were going to be to go to the next level? When did you say, okay, I'm going to hit, or did you have an idea? Did somebody come and you say, hey, I want you to play for us? Or how did it work back then, the agents and things like that?
Well, it's funny. Sizemore, when he got drafted in the first round, I think it was like the second pick or something in the first round.
Yeah.
Wasn't he, Stu? When he's second pick, first round? Second or third?
Yeah, he'd been he was consensus All-American twice, and
incredible.
And
he'd run step for step with the running backs down the sideline, just wiping people out, and all they had to do was just hold on to his shirt tail. But and so he gets a keg for his draft party, and I think he'd been into that keg for a while, and I walk up and and he goes, English, he goes, when your time comes, I got the agent for you. And I'm like, oh yeah, fat chance. And then 2 years later, it looked like I was going to get drafted. So I went to Jerry and said, all right, who's the guy? And so he told me, and that was the agent. And so I mean, I didn't back then. It was now these kids are thinking about it as freshmen.
Yeah.
They're thinking about getting to the league. Everything's about getting to the league. And we didn't think about that. We just thought about getting a degree and getting through the season and playing well. And there were different times.
So what do you think about that? You mentioned something very important. A lot of kids today, they don't pick a college just to play football, and go and get a degree. They pick a college. How can I get the most exposure? How can I be, go number 1 in a draft, right? So what do you think about that transition from where I'm getting a degree. If I make it, great. And even when I went to school, you had a lot of guys want to go to the league, but a lot of guys still believe in getting that degree as a mainstay, right? You had a few that are like, okay, I'm going to the next level. So what do you think about that transition over the years? Do you think it's a good thing or just a sign of the times?
That's a great question. Follow the money. The money has gotten so big, and the coaches. I heard Mac Brown say this to the team one time over at his house. He just said, I make way too much money. He said, they should be paying you guys and not us coaches this much money. We get all the money that you guys should be getting. And I agree with him on that. I mean, I if the money wasn't there, it'd be different. but the money's there. They just give it all to the coaches and staff of 900 people. And we had 6 coaches and Daryl had 1 secretary. And we had 2 PR guys. That was it. Bill Little and Jones Ramsey was the head one, and Bill was assistant back then.
Wow.
I mean, it was
that tells you something.
There was no
Bill
staff.
Little was the assistant.
We just played football, And what'd you say?
I said that's got to say something when you said Bill Little was the assistant.
Yeah.
SID there.
Yeah.
Bill Little, like he's legendary.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
He's a wealth of knowledge. I love sitting with Bill Little, and you just wind him up, and you'll learn more about this school and the players and the coaches than you will anywhere else. He's really something special.
I always said I wanted Bill Little just to read me a story one night. I'll pay for that.
Yeah.
Put that on your auction list.
And have him write it too.
Yeah.
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 I would say get him and Craig Way in a room and just let them go.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Between the two of them, oh my God, that'd be.
Yeah.
Well,
you love Jones Ramsey. You ever meet him? Jones Ramsey.
I know the name.
World's tallest fat man.
I never met him.
That's what he called himself. And he, all his water glasses seem to be brown too.
Yeah.
The big tall water glass, and they always seem to be very brown.
Yeah.
He was old school. Man, he was funny though. Golly.
Give me your favorite Coach Royal story.
My favorite Coach Royal?
Yes, favorite story about Coach Royal.
Oh man, there's so many. I'm going to take up too much time. That's too important to me. I want to get the right one. Let me come back.
I hear you.
We'll come back.
Gotcha.
So you mentioned you found the agent. You get drafted, 2nd round draft pick in '75 to the Lions. Was that the team? Did you have a specific team you wanted to go, or was it just, hey, somebody pick me and I'll play?
Okay, I've got a good answer for that. But I want to tell you one of my favorite Darryl Royal stories.
Okay, let's do that.
When I was searching my memory banks for, he came up to me. I think it was probably the week of my first start at OU, we were in Austin, and he came up to me. I was in the hallway there, and he goes, "Hey, Doug," he goes, kind of patted me on the back. He goes, "You're a good guy." I said, "Well, thank you, Coach." He said, "You know what happens to good guys, don't you?" I go, "No, what?" He goes, "Not a damn thing."
Okay.
I got that message too.
Okay.
I got that message. But back to the whole draft experience. So I played in the Senior Bowl, and after the game, the defensive coordinator. No, it was a defensive line coach for sure. He might have been the DC. Back then, a DC might be the D-line coach. They don't do that anymore.
Right.
Paul Wiggin. And so after the game, he goes, "Hey," "You want to go have a beer after the game?" It's like, what? A coach, a player having a beer with the coach? I'm going, man, this is big time. And so he was with the 49ers. And I go, "Sure." He go, "I'll meet you back at the hotel bar." And so after we got cleaned up, went, I found him in the bar and we sat down there. And we ordered beer, and he looks at me and he says, "Doug, I just want you to know the San Francisco 49ers are going to draft you in the 1st round if you're still available." And they had the 8th pick.
Wow.
And I was like, holy cow. And so I was fired up, man. I thought, I'm going to San Francisco and, yada, yada, yada. And here I come, boy, big time. And so, it was kind of a tradition that you'd have a keg, and like Jerry did, and fellas over. And so, and back in the day, they had the phone sitting on the table there, I don't know if it was push button or dial, but it was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And no caller ID or call waiting. And so fellas are getting after it, and I'm not having any beer. I'm waiting on that big phone call. I'm waiting for San Francisco to call me. And somebody had a radio on, and they were following the draft on the radio. That's how glamorous it was. And So phone would ring and some friend would be going, "Hey, this is Tom Landry," and yada yada. Well, hey, I got to keep this phone clear, and I'd hang up,
Uh-huh.
And so first round went, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, and these guys are looking at me like, "Man, you are a loser. What is this about San Francisco?" And then the phone rings, and it's Jack Mills, my agent, Jerry's agent, and he says, he goes, "Hey, did you hear?" I go, "No." He goes, "Yeah, the Lions took you in the second round. They want you to call him. Here's the number." And that was my draft experience.
Wow.
Oh my goodness! So you didn't know that you had gotten drafted. You're still waiting on a call.
Yeah. 3 or 4 rounds later.
Because it was the Joker pretending to be Tom Landry. That's why.
Yeah.
They probably heard of business, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's great, man.
Those were different days. They're not nearly as glamorous or involved, or no media and no money. It was just pure football.
Yeah,
That's good.
I can only imagine. I covered the 2018 draft up at Jerry World, and I can only imagine what it would have been like when you went through the draft versus what I got to see and what we see every year now with
Yeah.
the all the glitz and the glamour. It's they do a red carpet and just it's so over the top.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I was kind of odd back then about this sort of stuff, about anything fancy, and I'm not sure I would have. If they were doing it right now, if they had this kind of hoopla back then, I'm not sure I'd have gone. I probably would have said, no, just here's, I'm not
And we're
going to be
seeing
there.
that today. A lot of guys decide, nah, I don't want to deal with all that. I want to be home with my family.
Yeah,
They may let a camera in, but other than that, they kind of just want to be around their loved ones, which
yeah.
I think is
That's
admirable.
how it ought to be, I think. But
I agree.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys, but when I think the agents they want to maximize their potential of making money off the field too,
Well, that's
right?
true.
So I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's part of it. I think that's part of it being in the hoopla to get the side deals, to get the Nabisco, or to get the
Ketchup deal.
the
Nike.
ketchup deal and the Nike and
I get
the Chevrolet deals, So
Yeah,
yeah, so
I
that's
get
part.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I
so
said, follow the money.
exactly. That's what they're doing. They're trying to follow the money, but these agents get into them really early nowadays,
Yeah,
and they push them to do all those little things to get as much to maximize the money that's you're going to make off the field.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not the dumbest idea, that's for sure. So your NFL season, and I was reading up, it went really well, but you did have to take a break, right? In 79 or 80,
80. Yeah, skipped 80.
right? Was it and it I was reading up. It had to do with injury or what
Well,
was it?
not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, they a lot of people write that, and I kind of kept it to myself. But
Understand.
I played 5 years, and and I had a couple of knee injuries, and my neck was really getting bad, and my right shoulder was getting bad, and I had to tape up both my legs to the skin just to practice, and it was absolutely no fun. And we went 2-14 that year.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? Money just I'll get a job. I mean, I don't. There are other ways to make money. I'm not. I'm just. I can't do this. And I looking back, I wish I'd have handled it, given them more notice, or done things a little differently. But I wasn't really 100% sure till the very end, and I just left the country for a few weeks. And it was, looking back, I'm surprised my coaches ever spoke to me again. But they contacted me after the season and said, what can we do to get you to come back? And what they did is what I learned, having a year off football, being to sort of step out of the woods and see the trees, the forest, I learned a huge lesson, and I still feel like it drives what I do today, and that is that uh, football is not really important, but what's important is that because so many people, particularly young people, think football and football players are really cool, then you have this bully pulpit. And it was really driven home to me when, I've never turned down an autograph. That's just something I've always been. I was always the last guy to get out of the locker to my truck and drive home after a game because I was getting every single piece of toilet paper and everything else those kids wanted me to sign. I just thought that's my job. And I got a letter from a woman that said, I don't know what you said to Billy in that talk you had with him. I don't even remember Billy. He said, but he's ever since you had a talk with him, he's been studying and making great grades. And I remember the kid, what it was is what I always did to kids. I mean, a little kid would hand me something, I'd always ask them the same thing. I go, you making good grades? And usually they give you that doe in the headlight look, and I go, oh yeah, no, good grades is important. You just don't even know if they hear you. And you give them their autograph and they don't say thank you and they run off and you forget about it. But the point I'm making is that was a great example of how I did nothing. I did my fingers like that for a second and signed his whatever it was and asked him if he made good grades. And it in terms of at that point, in terms of school, it changed his life. It changed his study habits, which could very well have leveraged into some better things in his life down the road if he stayed with it. But my point is that when you play football and you're good at it and you get some acclaim, you go to a Pro Bowl or whatever, then you've got a very loud voice. And you can use it waste it on yay me, look how great I am, look how flashy I am, look at all the cool things I get to do. Or you can use it to just in a matter of words and gestures, you can have a huge impact on a lot of people for good. And so when I realized that the bully pulpit we have and had as athletes and how important that was to society, I couldn't get back to Detroit fast enough.
Yeah.
And then had 5 really good years, and then they put me in a nose tackle my 10th year, and I was a tall, skinny nose man. I don't have to tell you how that turned out. I could two gap, but I was still 6'6",
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Question though, that was a great story about the kids and everything, but we kind of want to know, what country did you go to when you left the country?
England.
I went to England.
Yeah.
Had some
London,
fish and chips over there.
Had that quite a bit. Yeah. Went to Stonehenge.
Oh, really?
I did all that stuff. Yeah. I learned how to drive. I could drive on the left side of the road, and
wow.
Stonehenge, you could just drive up and park, walk up and lean on the dolmens, just.
Yeah.
Now you can't get near it, but back then, it was, we just hang out.
Oh, wow. Doug, you're a good guy, man, because I don't know, man. I'd have been in Mexico, down in South America somewhere, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot. I was actually looking at another career at the time, and that's what drove me to going to England. I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. I ended up being there 6 weeks.
Oh, wow, good deal.
But, yeah, it was crazy. It was a life-changing experience.
Yeah, that's one of those eat, pray, love trips, So
yeah,
and then it kind of got you back centered, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's good stuff.
Something I looked up, I saw your 4th all-time in career tackles for the Lions still. Depending on the stat, all-time career sacks. But the problem was the NFL didn't start counting sacks as a statistic until like year 7 to 8 of your career. Yeah. So you had to look at 2 spots. Just talk about some of the teammates that you had around you and how I mean, I know wins and losses are what they are, but
Yeah.
I got to imagine it was still pretty fun to just play football with some of those guys.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, Stu. We had great teammates, great mentors early on. Matter of fact, I just lost one of them 3 days ago. Herb Orvis died
Sorry to hear that.
3 days ago. He was a defensive lineman. He went to the Marines, and then after the Marines, he played football at Colorado, was All-American, and then the Lions drafted him in the first round, and he was the most intense player I ever saw as a defensive lineman, and I got to study under this guy. And so, early on, I had really great players to look up to they were old school. I mean, you wasn't good enough just to be the best player. You had to be able to drink and smoke cigarettes and carouse and still kick everybody's butt.
Right.
So it was I came in the old school and then went out as guys have their own dietitians. Kind of it's sort of I was in that period, but and once Floyd Peters got to Detroit, he had come from San Francisco. As a matter of fact, he replaced the guy that told me he was going to draft me, and then he started the Silver Rush in San Francisco, and then Lions picked him up with Monty Clark as the head coach in '78, and those guys came in and got rid of a lot of guys, but Floyd knew how to rush the passer, and he knew he knew how to treat each player and talk to him the way he needed to be talked to. He was hard on some and easy on others and challenging on others, and he was a tremendous defensive line coach. There'll never be another one like him. And as it is, we usually were 1 or 2 in number of sacks every year he was there. And we didn't get to rush the passer that much. I mean, we didn't score a lot of points. We didn't win a whole lot of games. And so we were still playing run on most downs and still managed to get a lot of sacks and still had a great number against. We're usually one of the top teams against the run too. So, I mean, we had a really good defensive line, and we had one of everything. Of course, my longest running teammate that we probably gotten the most trouble together on and off, mostly on the field, was Al Bubba Baker. And that man really needs to go into the Hall of Fame. He got 19 sacks as a freshman. And I think he turned 19 as a freshman, or maybe turned 20 as a rookie. I mean, The guy, I guess he went through school. He had a really good mom. She pushed the hell out of him. Okay. And I think he graduated in like 2.5 years or something, and got drafted. And he was college age kid. I mean, he was 18. He was 19, I think, when we got him. And got 19 sacks, and was absolutely fearless. As you know, defensive lineman. I mean, you don't control anything. You throw your body and let your training take over. I mean, and it's hard for young guys to do that. They still want to kind of be careful and kind of plan things, and that's how we played. You just throw your body and know that your feet are going to do what you taught them to do. But Bubba he embraced it quickly. Was a great player. I used to call him a wild and crazy guy. We had a lot of fun. And we did a lot of stuff that probably get a lot of trouble. Got away with some of it. but Bubba is the first to talk about. The guy named Dave Purifoy was very impressive. He was a undersized block of a black belt in, I don't know, 2 or 3 martial arts, and was like a wise man. He was a defensive lineman for Green Bay, and we picked him up at the end of his career. And he was really good for Bubba because Bubba could spin off, and Dave knew just how to talk to him, and he was incredibly intense. I mean, he had this really black skin, and these big white eyes, and he'd get in that stance and he'd look up, and all you'd see is these teeth and his big eyes, and he'd come off the line of scrimmage, and we always called him the Tasmanian Devil because he just like a whirlwind, like that cartoon.
Right.
Yeah.
And God, I mean, his feet would go up in the air and arms are swinging around, and he could stuff men twice his size. He was an incredible human being. And we lost him about 10 years ago to pancreatic cancer. It's just heartbreaking. But Dave was a guy that, you get him involved with any team, and that team's going to be better because Dave Purifoy was on it. And, we had some really, one of my dear friends to this day, Eric Williams, who ended up going to Washington and winning a couple Super Bowls, and he always shows me those rings. He was an interesting guy. He and Randy White were the only two guys that could stuff people while standing up.
Really?
I had to really have that flat back, and to really, I felt like control somebody. And both of those two guys somehow mastered the technique of raising up and not getting knocked off the line of scrimmage. I was always real impressed with that. I don't know. I could go on and on about all these defensive linemen.
So Doug, I have a question for you. Would you do it all over again?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Would you do anything different?
Yeah, I would train harder. Absolutely would train harder. I mean, we know so much more now about training. But I think I would have spent more time doing the things I wasn't good at rather than really doubling down on this, bench press and stuff that I was gifted.
Right.
I've worked on my speed more and, broken down pass rush moves and tried to strengthen the components. And I'd have done a lot of things differently. Yeah.
Inducted into the Longhorn Men's Hall of Honor in '86. You were inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame in 2011. Who inducted you to the College Football Hall of Fame?
What do you mean?
Who
inducted me?
Who presented you at the ceremony?
Oh, they don't really
do
present.
that? Okay.
No, you sit up on the dais and
they just bring you
listen
up.
to them talk about each one of us one at a time. And
I remember that was a huge deal. I remember that was a huge deal around here for you getting into the College Football Hall of Fame. You're in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. Don't know too many people that are in two states Sports Hall of Fame.
Well, I have dear friends in those states,
Yes.
that I think probably pushed for me. And that whole College Football Hall of Fame, though, that was definitely life changing. That's really special. And Steve Hatchell, executive director of the NFF Hall of Fame, is a prince. Yeah. And all Archie Manning, all the people involved with the hall are just top notch. I mean, just being around them challenges you to be a better person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Tell everybody what you're doing now. You still have the business with the training equipment. Well,
it's pretty dead right now, like everybody else's,
right.
But I
pre-pandemic.
Yeah, it was doing real well. I stumbled onto an idea that I ended up. Well, I was feeding my cattle at the ranch, and it was during the drought, and so I raised longhorns. And so you get these big round bales. They weigh about 1,000, 1,200 pounds, and you cut the strings, and then you unroll. Because you don't want all the animals right around that, those horns, they'll hurt each other. So you have to spread it out. So you have to unroll this thing. So I'm unrolling a 1,200-pound round bale in a flat working pen area. And, of course, I'm hands on knees tired after 6 steps. But I'm thinking, man, I recognize that movement because everything in football that I never trained on that was mechanical slid. And ultimately, when you slide, you kind of roll your back and you kind of lean into it, and it gets a little easier as it gets going, right? Well, if you do that on the field, they'll find you on your back in the end zone. I mean, you especially at the highest levels, you don't. It's not a push; it's a lift, coordinated through your hips and feet. So you're working. Everything was working up, even though it looks like you're pushing, but technically you're in a lifting movement right at the point of contact. And that's what you do with this big, heavy, round thing that's rolling resistance. You have to work your hands up and keep your hips down at the same time, yet keep your feet moving. And so, plus it keeps your knees safe and your joints safe when you're in that flexed position. And so, I thought, man, that's it. That's what they need to teach these young kids how to stuff people. So I sat on it and I talked to Coach Patterson about it, and I talked to other coaches. Spike Dykes loved it, was always pushing me to pursue it. And so, I was not really ready to go back to work at the time. I was enjoying the ranch and so my son in the 9th grade says, "Hey, Dad, I want to go out for football." And I'm like, too late for you, son. I said, these kids around here, they've been playing since they're in diapers. I said, you're going to be way behind. He goes, no, I really want to play. And so I said, well, here's the deal. You let me coach you some. Let me get you caught up, and then you can play. But I'm not going to just turn you loose out there and go get hurt. Okay. So we went out to the ranch, and I put him in with the round bales. And I said, okay, roll that. When he starts pushing on it, and it's not budging, I said, come on, son, roll it. Just find a way, roll it. Well, pretty soon that back gets flat. Those thumbs are up. Those hands are working up, and pretty soon he could kind of get it where he'd flip over a little bit, roll over. And so after he got where he could, got the movement down, it was now second sense or sixth sense or whatever you call it. I said, hey, you getting hungry? We'll get something to eat. He said, well, when are you going to coach me? I go, you're done. That's all you need right there. And so he went back to the ranch with me a couple times and would go down there and roll those round bales of hay. And then football season started. And so he's tall and skinny like I was at that age, physically less mature than the other guys. And and they're playing, and this kid, offensive tackle on the other team, 9th graders, 8th graders, 9th grade, whatever it was. Yeah, he had a beard about like Stevie's. I mean, it's a 9th grader. This kid was a man, and he's just crushing the defensive line for Blake's little team. And I'll go, and so that went on and on. They're just going 8 yards at a pop down the field. The safeties are making the tackles over and over, and the other team scores every time they get the ball. Well, suddenly out trots Blake, my son. And and I'm going, oh boy, this is not going to be good. And he gets down his long, gangly stance. And at the snap of that ball, he propped that guy up and shoved his butt back in the backfield like a round bale. Because he used his hips and his hands, and his motion worked up. Night and day difference. And he stuffs this kid. The running back's used to the soft corner. He runs into the blocker, the tackle, and they all fall down. And Blake gets a tackle for a loss on his first play in the game.
Wow.
Nice.
And every time he went in there, anybody tried to block him, all he knew was he'd just round bail him. He'd just stuff him.
Wow.
And then I leaned over to my wife. I said, honey, I guess I'm going to have to do something with this idea. So that's the long preface. Built several prototypes, played with different types of ballast and resistance and foam weight, and came up with a prototype that worked. Got it patented, called it the Power Drive. And I spent a couple of years, going to schools, which I hate that part. I mean, of the selling part. I like going to the schools. I like delivering them myself because a lot of times they'll ask me to talk to the kids, or I'll meet with the D-line coach or something. Yeah, but so that's I enjoy that part, but the selling part I just never been any good at. But at this point, it's all word of mouth, and coach changed jobs. He calls and gets some more for the new school, and so we're shipping them all over the country. We were. And BSN Sports is actually contracted to sell them, and that was starting to go well. And then again, the plague hit. So I don't know what's going to happen next year with it, but it's been a good run. I'm excited that the product works and it has a positive impact on kids and coaches and families. And what else could I ask for? So.
Yeah, you are a great salesman because I sell real estate now, and I want one. So so the story got me,
trust
man.
me, you won't like it.
Doug, you're in that class of people that every time I encounter you, whether it's at Info Alumni event or just wherever, I come away feeling better.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And you're someone I have admired for a long time. It's such a thrill to get to talk to you like this, and to learn more about you. Again, I consider it an honor to get to be on the NFL alumni board with guys like you and Stevie and Jerry and everybody, Raul. You definitely help my commitment to service, coming up as a Boy Scout all these years. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. These have been great stories.
Yeah.
Just to learn more about you has been fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well, you honor me greatly. Thank you, Stu. I told you a long time ago, when you need me, I'll be there for you. So.
Well, and I so appreciate it. That'll do it for this week's Longhorn Lowdown. Again, huge thanks to Doug English for joining us. Check it out on Twitter at Longhorn Lowdown and on Instagram now. You can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Stu Myrick. That's STEWMYRICK. Stevie is on Twitter at Stevie Lee 65.
Stevie J. Lee.
Stevie J. Lee. Instagram is
Stevie Lee 65.
And
I'm gonna email you and ask. I'm gonna get that from you.
Yeah, we'll share it. And Todd
send me
Hunt on Instagram at 94.hunt. So make sure you share that. I know Doug's on Twitter, but I'll get the address later. We'll share it when we post the episode. So
Absolutely.
But yeah, again, thanks so much. Have a great night. Enjoy your week. And we will see you next time. But until then, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.